Why you? Why should you be New Jersey's next senator?
Well, I have the experience to get things done, and that's why we're here at this Lowe's improvement store today, because I want to point out that Senator Lautenberg and I worked very hard for the Superfund program to get funding to clean up toxic waste sites, and I also was the sponsor of the brownfields legislation, which was bipartisan, to clean up hazardous waste sites in New Jersey and around the country. And that's what I do. I find a problem and I try to come up with a solution. And very much, you know, in the way that Senator Lautenberg worked hard to try to bring money back to the state for mass transit or cleaning up the ocean or healthcare reform. I believe in government. I think the government can make a difference, and that's why I want to be in the Senate.
I'm curious, what do you think distinguishes you from Congressman Holt or from Mayor Booker or Speaker Oliver, all of whom I'm sure would say they think government can make a difference, and all of whom I'm sure would cite their own track records and records of success?
Well, if you look at what I've accomplished, you know, the healthcare reform, cleaning up the ocean, you know, establishing programs to clean up toxic waste sites, and I don't want to go through a whole laundry list, but there's so many. I think you would see that I've just accomplished a lot more, and that I'm going to be able to do the same type of thing in the Senate, more so than the other people that are running. Not only have I been in Congress longer, and I have relationships with a lot of the senators who used to be members of the House, but I can talk about that proven track record. I mean, tomorrow, for example, in the House, out of the Health Subcommittee, where I'm the ranking Democrat, we're going to report out a bipartisan bill that changes the reimbursement rate for doctors so that doctors will take Medicare. More and more doctors now do not take Medicare, and we've got to reverse that. So that's a problem for which tomorrow we're going to have a solution and report out a bill, both Democrats and Republicans, that'll guarantee access for seniors and the disabled to doctors so they don't lose their doctor.
I'm curious, why would you risk, or why would you want to give up that seniority in the House, where you, as a ranking member on subcommittees, have a chance to really influence legislation, and become a junior member of the U.S. Senate if the voters see it to put you there?
I think you can do a lot more in the Senate. I think that, you know, the nature of the body is such and the way it operates that you just can accomplish a lot more, and of course represent the whole state. And, you know, even in the last 10 years, I know we're at Lowe's here in East Rutherford, but if I use the Superfund or the Brownfields program as an example, I mean, I worked, for example, on the Ringwood Superfund site to get it redesignated and cleaned up in Passaic County. And increasingly, I've been going around the state and trying to work on projects statewide. And much of the legislation that I've sponsored that's become law not only applies to the state, but to the whole country. So I just think I can do a lot more in the U.S. Senate.
You'd be coming from a body that is, I guess, being well known for its dysfunctionality, the U.S. House. The Senate is a place where one member can block a piece of legislation all by himself, unless you get the threat of the nuclear option, as we saw last week. What have you learned in the House that you think could help break through some of that logjam in the Senate? Can you break through that logjam in the Senate?
Well, I don't want to emphasize the ability to stop things from becoming law, because I think what's more important in the Senate is the ability to actually get legislation passed. And look, in both the Senate and the House in the last few years, there's been a lot that's made it more difficult to get things done. But I still think it's possible if you work hard and you know, reach across the aisle to the more mainstream, moderate Republicans, you can get things done. And you know, whether it's the you know, perfect example is what I just mentioned to you, which is, you know, trying to make sure that seniors and disabled have access to their doctors under Medicare, which, you know, we're going to do tomorrow and report out of committee. But I think that in the Senate, it's even I can even play more of a role in accomplishing that.
You know, you look at the polls that have come back so far, and obviously the polls it's early, but you're trailing Mayor Booker, at least in the early polls, pretty significantly. Why do you think that is? Why do you know, he's already got the reputation of Mayor Superman, he's been called by. Why do you think that is? Is it simply the force of his personality?
Well, you know, this is this whole celebrity thing, which, you know, I'm not really going to get into, but I think that those polls, you know, really aren't very informative, because this is an election on August 13th. I think the voters that come out on August 13th are going to be very aware of the issues and care about electing someone who they think is going to accomplish something and be effective. And so I think that the polls really don't tell you who's going to vote or how people are going to vote on August 13th.
It's we talk and if I was picking a Democrat to, let's say, light up a room and get people bouncing off the ceiling, probably not the first call that would come. No disrespect, but probably not the first call that would come through. How can voters get a sense of what you can do and what you have done, other than that? If that's
Well, I think that look, the direct contact with the voters is really important in this election. So we have a field operation. We're knocking on doors. We're calling up voters. We have a lot of volunteers out there that are doing that. Plus, I'm doing it myself. There are ads, and there's a lot of free media. And I think over the next 3 weeks, more and more people will tune in and be able to find out about the records of the candidates and who's more effective. And that's part of what we're doing today, obviously.
You've been citing the environment a lot today. Obviously, we're at a Superfund site, but poll after poll shows voters care about jobs and the economy, jobs
Absolutely.
and the economy. What's your plan to revitalize New Jersey's job rate? I mean, one of the higher unemployment rates in the entire country,
Exactly.
as well as the national economy.
Well, I don't want to take away from what we're doing today. Obviously, if you clean up a toxic waste site and you put in this case, a home improvement center on it, or if you put residents on it, you do create jobs.
But there aren't that many toxic waste sites in New Jersey.
I think that what needs to be done at the federal level is, first of all, Congress has to repeal the sequester. I was not in favor of the sequester. The Tea Party and the more right-wing element within the Republican Party have been really insisting that we keep cutting everything at the federal level. And the sequester, which is an across-the-board cut, has been very damaging to the economy and slowing growth. So you have to get rid of that. And then you have to make some investments in infrastructure, which means, transportation projects. One of the things that I have proposed is a school modernization program where money would go back to New Jersey or to towns to repair or upgrade schools. That creates jobs. Also, investments in education, whether it's, giving money back to cities so they don't lay off teachers, or they can hire more teachers or policemen or firefighters. And also providing affordable options, for student loans and scholarships so students can go to college. And then also invest in research and development. New Jersey is so dependent on research dollars, and the cuts that have come in those research dollars mean, grants are not going to our universities or our pharmaceuticals to do research. These are the types of things. Get rid of the sequester, make some investments that will grow jobs and grow the economy, and then I think you can see a difference. But right now, the Tea Party has this stranglehold where they're just trying to cut everything across the board, and we've got to join with some mainstream Republicans to get rid of the sequester.
You think there's still enough mainstream Republicans out there to do that?
I think they're starting to realize it. A lot of them are concerned about defense cuts. There was even discussion yesterday in some of the media about the judicial system and how the courts are now suffering because of the sequester cuts. I mean, you really shouldn't have across-the-board cuts. You should cut programs that are not worthwhile and fund things that are, rather than just do it across the board. It makes no sense.
Finally, after Newtown, we heard a lot about guns and the calls for gun control, background checks. That couldn't get through the Senate. And now, in the wake of the George Zimmerman verdict and the situation with Trayvon Martin in Florida, some people are calling for re-examination of gun laws again. Do you think that the time is ripe for re-examination of gun laws? And is there enough support? Because this is a touchstone issue for a lot of Republicans. Is there enough support to at least have the conversation again, if not actually get something done?
I think that gun safety laws are really crucial. In other words, we need to move in the direction of what the president proposed, which is another assault weapons ban, universal background checks, and limitations on the number of clips. All right? I mean, those are things I think can get bipartisan support eventually. Remember that in the Senate, it was the 60-vote rule that made it difficult. But I think that needs to be revisited, and I think the public can put pressure, if you will, on the House and on the Senate to say that, that we should bring these common sense measures up again and look at gun safety in general. I mean, we talk about Trayvon Martin, the fact that, Zimmerman was able to have a concealed weapon, which is, the whole stand down laws in Florida. I mean, this makes it that anytime, someone thinks they're threatened, in this case not legitimately, they can use a gun. Well, if you didn't have a gun, then, Trayvon would probably still be alive. So, yes, there needs to be a national debate, and we need to pass gun safety legislation.
One more question. I'm sorry, you brought up the 60
No,
vote
that's all right.
threshold on guns. Would you be in favor of getting rid of that threshold and going back to the
Yes.
simple majority?
I think so. I really believe that the 60 vote rule is very detrimental to the operation of the Senate, and we shouldn't have it.
Even though you could be in the minority, let's say after the 2014 elections, if you're elected senator,
But
Republicans
again,
could have the majority.
My focus is getting things done, not being in a position to stop things from happening. And so I think that the 60 vote rule has really made it more difficult for the Senate to operate. I don't think it's a good thing.
Congressman, thank you so much, and best of luck in the
All right.
special, or the primary for the special
All right.
election.
Thanks a lot.